funds. In any event, I want to welcome everybody to tonight's Candidates Night for Ward 3. Today this is our second event. The first one was held on May the 7th, and it was a successful night. We had a number of candidates, and the process was a little limited because of the number of individuals. We had a time constraint on them. We only have 4, possibly 5 coming in today, but so we'll just open it up to like 15 minutes per person. First, we'll allow for questions from our delegates, and then we'll just open it up to the floor. However, given the fact that it's a limited number of folks, we'll just open it up at some point to anyone who has some questions. But to formally introduce myself, I'm Daniel Toscano. I'm the Vice Chair of the Ward 3 Democratic Caucus. And to my right is Blake Weber, who is Secretary of the committee. If there's any other committee members here, please stand up and introduce yourself.
Hi, Catherine Burton. I don't know what I'm doing this.
And I know we are here, Connor Finley, right? Finley, I said it. Connor's here from the NorthEndWaterfront.com, and he'll be filming this, so if you want to take a look back as to our event, it'll be put up, I think, immediately, and you can check out everything that has been said, okay? But without further ado, I want to begin our presentation, and we do have a little introduction that I'll read, and the introduction was prepared by Mr. Blake Weber, which he's got off everybody's website. So the first person that I'm going to introduce is Warren Tolman, who's running for Attorney General. And I'm going to tell you, Warren grew up in Watertown, Mass. He received his degrees from Amherst College and Boston College Law School. He served as state representative and state senator in Massachusetts from 1991 to 1999, where he fought the tobacco industry, led the fight for clean election laws, championed environmental protection, and stood up for working families. Tolman was Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor in 1998 and ran for governor in 2002. He spent the last decade as a practicing attorney at the law office of Holland and Knight, and also taught at Boston College Law School and Northeastern University School of Law. Tolman, 54, sorry to get your age, young guy. Currently lives in Watertown with his wife Carolyn. They have 3 children, Andrew, Catherine, and Julia. And I have the pleasure, when I started working in the legislature back in 1992, he was up there, and I can tell you he's always fought very hard for his constituencies, and I'm sure he'll be a tremendous asset to Commonwealth if he's elected to Attorney General. So without further ado,
I know I have 15 minutes, I'm going to take 10, because I got a crazy schedule, and I know Barry has votes tonight, so let me just say thank you, first of all. I appreciate it very much. Excuse my back. I'm running for Attorney General because I believe that the Attorney General's office in Massachusetts can have a tremendous, tremendously positive impact on the lives of the people of Massachusetts. And I want to tell you a little bit of how I think it should be done. I'm happy to have any questions if you have any. But specifically, as Dan alluded to, I grew up in Watertown. I'm the 7th of 8 kids. My mom and dad started our family in the Federal Housing Project in Boston at Fidelis Way. Moved over to Watertown. I went to the Watertown schools, to Amherst College, and then to BC Law. Was the first in my family to go to college. And learned some very important lessons on the way. About standing up for what you believe in, about fighting hard, and about listening to people. Those are lessons that I've tried to apply in my tenure in the public sector and in the private sector, and certainly as I've been an advocate for a wide variety of things along the way. As Dan alluded to, I took on tobacco, big tobacco, when they were at the height of the game, when we were smoking in rooms like this, when they were preying on young kids. 90% of people who started smoking started before they reached the age of 19. And I paid them back in a whole number of different measures, but the American Cancer Society sent me to other legislatures to teach them how to advocate against tobacco. The American Heart Association gave me their Statesman Award, and Rush Limbaugh attacked me on national radio. That's how I knew I was doing something right. Called me an anti-smoking Nazi. But I also fought for early childhood education, because in large part, a child's brain develops in that crucial period between 0 to 6. And also worked on domestic violence initiatives, the address confidentiality program that you see Secretary Galvin talking about on TV. That was my bill. And took on campaign finance reform. One of the toughest things to pass in the legislature is campaign finance and ethics reform. But I think it's important that as Democrats, elections be about our values, not about our money. And that's why I was the only candidate the history of the Commonwealth to run as a clean elections candidate in 2002 on a statewide basis. So I'm very proud of that as well. And I'm also proud to say that, you know, I've got a very positive rating from environmental groups. I'm the only person in this race endorsed by an environmental organization, Environmental League of Massachusetts. So I ran, as Dan alluded to, for governor in 2002, and frankly, I thought I was done. But the terrorists came to my neighborhood in April, started, I had the whole thing. I live a few hundred yards from where the shooting was, where the boat is, and et cetera. And we got woken up by my phone ringing, my daughter texting, "Did you hear that?" And everything unraveled from there. And, I had the SWAT team come through my house, and it was pretty intense, I'll tell you that. The helicopters overhead, dogs in my backyard, and when 5 guys go up the sides of your house, and then 3 guys come up your walkway with M4s, and they're down your basement yelling, "Door open right." And you see the guns turn from the top of the stairs, and you start thinking, this is the ultimate public servant, ready to put their life on the line for you. So I started thinking about, are there ways in which I could get back? Could I make a difference again? Because I thought, when I fought tobacco, I think my measures saved people's lives, and I get a lot of gratitude out of that. But I didn't have any plans to run. Frankly, I was thinking other ways. The governor had asked me to be on the Mass Development Board a few months before that, and I was doing that. And then Martha Coakley decided to run for governor, and Frank Bellotti, the father of the modern Attorney General's office, called me. And then Scott Harshbarger, another former Attorney General, called me. And they both said basically the same thing. You should do this. You should run for this. This is a perfect office for you, and you ought to think about the ways in which you can use it. So that's what I want to talk about, to use it to make a positive impact. By the way, I've been endorsed by all 4 living former Attorney Generals. I'm very proud of that. And some of those guys don't even talk to each other, so the fact that they agree with me is good. But seriously, there's a couple of issues that I want to focus on that I think are really important and deserving of my leadership skills. And at the end of the day, that's what this race is about. It's about leadership. It's not being about the best attorney. It's not being about the best former assistant attorney general. It's about leadership. It's about taking the office in a whole other direction and really focusing on some serious problems that I think need to be addressed. We'll talk about a couple. On-campus sexual assault. I've been talking about this for months. The fact that a woman in 2014 is more likely to be the victim of sexual assault if she goes to college than if she doesn't is a disgrace, in my opinion. I know it's on the front page of the papers in the last couple of weeks and all that. I've been talking about this for months. There's one college not too far from here indicates that 1 in per 100 students is a victim of sexual assault. There's not another one closer to here that says it's 1 in 3,200 at their campus. Now, either all the sexual predators are going to the first school, or second school is sweeping the problems under the rug, they're not dealing with it appropriately, and women don't feel comfortable coming forward. And it is primarily, although not exclusively, women that are assaulted. I want to call a summit. All the colleges and University of Massachusetts, and force them to implement best practices that my own alma mater, Amherst, went through a few years ago, a difficult chapter, did learn from it, and let them know that somebody's watching. And each of them has to develop a plan. We'll have to develop a plan to put in place those best practices. And we will have to teach students about bystander intervention, and talk to campus security, and make sure that we have all the men and women together talking about ways that can make the campus safer. So I want to take the best colleges and universities and make them the safest. I'll hold that summit next March, when I'm elected, hopefully in November, sworn in January. I also want to face the issue of opiate addiction. It's a scourge on our communities. I was in Taunton a few weeks ago. This is something, by the way, I'm not just talking about here. I've worked on this issue for many, many years, as has my brother. My brother worked very closely. Some of you might remember my brother Stephen was a state senator after me. He's the president of the AFL-CIO. We worked very closely with Mayor Walsh on these issues. They were the go-to guys. Representative Michaelwitz, as you know, has become a leader on this and focused on this as well. It's a real issue that we got to focus on and address attention on. And you look at what's happening in Taunton today. I was down there a few weeks ago. Chief Walsh of the police department pointed to a brown apartment building. Said, "Well, we've been there twice in the last 5 days. There's a 24-year-old woman. She's overdosed twice." We get to the hospital, and her mother wants us to find a bed for her, we can't. And so they stabilize her, they let her out. That was a Tuesday. I talked about her Tuesday night. I talked about her Wednesday night. Thursday, I got the email. She had her third and her final overdose. And we failed her. We failed her by not helping her, by not finding a bed, by not finding a substance abuse center so she could get the detox and the treatment that she needed. And that's happening over and over again. And it shouldn't be happening in 2014. So what I want to do, as your Attorney General, is to push for more healthcare entities and make sure that we have, by the way, do you allow Republicans to take video? Who's the other guy?
I was gonna ask after this segment, however.
I don't care, but I know Martha's coming, and I know that they're just trying to play gotcha, so.
May I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, Mark with the Republicans, just doing some filming of speeches. And I was here at the last event and it was okay, so.
Whatever, I don't care.
And it's, yeah.
I don't care, but, it's your call, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I believe, speaking with Blake, our secretary, he was here at the last meeting. I think he may have worked out things with our chairman. I will have a conversation with him, but at this moment, if you don't mind, I'd like to keep him here.
I can stop.
If that
That's
makes
okay.
sense.
No, you're not bothering me, I just want to know, I thought of it there, and I knew where you were from, because I've seen you around. But anyways, we need to, so on opiates, yeah, but you may be a Democrat.
I'll just stop and pay more attention.
No, specifically, we need to hold a small number of doctors are prescribing a large number of these pills. 20% of doctors are prescribing 80% of opiates. We need to make sure that the non-oncologists are held accountable. We need to make sure that big pharma is producing these pills in tamper-resistant form. We need to educate our young kids in a serious way. We're not doing that, and it needs to start in middle school and in high school. So that's the type of leader I want to be. Another issue, and it's in the North End, it's in all over our state, is consumer protection. I think we can do a better job letting the people of Massachusetts know that they can have a consumer advocate, an aggressive consumer advocate in the Attorney General's office, and to utilize that office to help the woman in Dorchester who pays a pain of $5,000, never sees him again. She can't afford to hire an attorney. And I know people know, certainly with the treasurer's unclaimed money list, I don't think enough people know that the consumer protection component is there for the Attorney General's office to help them. And we need to particularly go after communities of color, communities where English is a second language, and the elderly. That's where the predators start. That's where they need to be stopped. And if we do it right, we will discern patterns and practices before they get wind in their sail and they're taking on everybody else. I want to be in the community doing that. Finally, last issue, gun control. I took on big tobacco. I'm not afraid to take on the NRA. And the most powerful lobby in America today politically is the NRA. And you know what? We've got to have smart gun technology in Massachusetts today. Smart gun technology is the same technology, by the way, that was on my iPhone 5S. And basically what it means is, I wake it up with my thumb. It recognizes my fingerprint. That same technology is available on a gun handle. So you grip a gun, it recognizes your fingerprint, it'll fire. If you don't want it to recognize other people, it will only recognize you. If you want it to recognize 5 other people, you can just program it such. I call it seatbelts for guns. It's something we need to do today. Every hour of every day, somewhere in America, a young child is injured as a result of a gun accident in the home. A 9-year-old yesterday in Texas shot herself in the head. Every hour, every day. Smart gun technology, my friends, can save lives. Smith & Wesson was going to market this 15 years ago, 1999, 2000. And the NRA and the other gun manufacturers organized a boycott of their products and said, no, you don't. Their stock started to tank, they shelved the technology, and there it is languished in every hour of every day. So I want to force the implementation of smart gun technology. Neither of my opponents will do this. They've said that. I will do it. I will do it. I took on big tobacco. NRA, here I come. I'm not, however, trying to take away anyone's guns. My dad had a gun. It's about being smart about it. So the other issue, couple other issues, I want to work on pay equity. I have 2 daughters and 1 son. I have a real hard time that my 2 daughters are going to earn on average 77 cents on the dollar as my son is. I think my son's wonderful, but I don't love him any more than I love my 2 daughters. And you know what, it didn't make sense 50 years ago, it doesn't make sense in 2014. And finally, last issue, Dan, is just, I want you to know that irrespective of your race, your religion, your sex, your sexual orientation, you will have a fighter, you will have someone on your team, you will have an advocate that is working on your behalf to make Massachusetts a better place to work and to live and to raise a family. So, thank you. Happy to answer.
Senator, thank you. Interesting, you would talk about gun control and your gun policy, and I'm glad you did, because my exact question was going to say, we see too many young kids today handling guns, stolen guns in our communities, and committing crimes with those guns, and I'm glad you have a policy. So you answered my question, unless you have to add any more.
No, we're all for comprehensive, Dan, solutions to this. This is one piece that the Attorney General can do by him or herself today. No new laws needed. This technology is not available anywhere in the country. Some of you might have seen the Times article 2 weeks ago. Woman wanted to sell it in California, she got death threats. The retailer said, no, I'm not going down that path anymore. So they backed off. It's not available because of the NRA. Someone needs to stand up to them. It's been there. If we showed the computer technology 15 years ago, we wouldn't have any good technology there either. So here we are. So, I look at this saying, the time has come, we can save lives. And by the way, I used to say, if we pass this, we pass this regulation, the Attorney General again can do it by him or herself, other states will follow. Then I found out that New Jersey passed a law in 2002 saying once smart gun technology is available anywhere in the country, we have to have it available in New Jersey. So it's not only a theory that others will follow, not Tolman saying maybe it'll happen. It's the law in New Jersey. So I'm excited about that, but it's about standing up for the NRA. So I have someone else stop my car every morning because no.
So I'd like to open it up to the floor. Anyone on the floor have any questions? Jim Salini. If you just state your name and your address, please, if you don't have your name.
Jim Salini, North End. I'll ask you the same question I asked Maura Healy 2 weeks ago. You believe the casino repeal bill should be on the ballot?
Yes. I signed the petition to do so. I'm going to vote against it, Jim. I think that people should have a say. I actually think that places like Springfield, Jim, need an economic infusion. In this case, it's $800 to $1 billion. Springfield, as some of you might recall, was under receivership from 2003 to 2009. And their revenues are very flat. They're teetering. They're not doing great. This is a way in which we can help them. And by the way, 40% of the revenue 1 hour down the road from Springfield is from Massachusetts, so we're losing that revenue. So I don't think it's the cure-all here, but I think it's something that would help a community like Springfield.
You think the Attorney General misinterpreted the law?
You know what, I've been asked that question, and I'm not going to second guess Martha Colte. I think the SJC decision will be forthcoming, but really, in all candor, I think this is, whether they did the right thing or not, the real test for the next Attorney General is how, if the casinos come to Massachusetts, who's going to be tough on the casino industry? Who's going to hold their feet to the fire on surrounding community agreements, host community agreements, and utilizing Chapter 93, which is our consumer protection law, in the most aggressive manner to go after predatory marketing practices? And Jim, I take a backseat to no one on that. I went after big tobacco when they were preying on young kids before it was politically popular. I'm going to do it with the casino industry. They want to put a lien on somebody's house. Not in Massachusetts, not under my watch. It's just not going to happen. And the marketing practices in which they've engaged in other communities, other states. I'll be the most aggressive Attorney General in the United States on these issues.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe we have one more question.
Yeah, my name is Todd Plants. I live in Bullfish Triangle. There are a number of high-profile cases recently where folks have gotten off, have not been, what can I say, have committed acts of violence, have not been punished, have gotten off, have appeared before judges 17, 18 times.
Remy?
That's the one that comes to mind. I was trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
That seems like the justice system's letting the state down.
Yep.
Particularly when you can point to other communities, not the son of famous broadcasters, that are getting the book thrown at them.
Yep.
So how do we restore faith in justice?
Couple things. I came over to women's, a platform for women's issues. Generally, the domestic violence is not just a women's issue, but it's everybody's issue. But specifically, one of my planks was a no-drop policy that several other states have, where basically, if you accuse me of domestic assault, and then you decide the next day that you don't want to go forward, you can't drop it unilaterally. It allows for the investigators to pursue charges against you even if you back off on it. And there are a number of instances where that's actually saved lives. Furthermore, you can allow the assistant district attorneys to have an additional allocation of time to evaluate dangerousness. Several more hours in the Remy case might have been of benefit to see if they could find some other witnesses, to see to protect Ms. Martell's life. So there's a couple instances. The third thing is, we need to get better assistant district attorneys. I'm not saying that the district attorneys in that case, did anything differently than this happens, frankly, every day in the Martell case. But we pay our starting district attorneys $37,500. That's roughly what I had in student loans when I graduated from law school, and that was more than a couple of weeks ago. Law school is very, very expensive, so we need to pay our assistant district attorneys a little bit better as well. So there's a number of forms of the law that are needed. There's also a number of things that we need to do to make the criminal justice system work better, Todd. Okay.
Senator, at this time, I think we ran a little behind.
Yeah, I know we have.
Senator
I know Senator Feingold
has the
really done
budget. I want to say thank you to you for being here. Before I get to Senator Feingold, and then I won't keep you waiting, I understand you have a budget. Another delegate appeared, our neighborhood liaison, Dino DeFronzo, was present today, and my good friend, state representative, Aaron Michaelwitz. There's a lot of good things I can say about him, but I'm just going to say hello. We don't have time. I don't have all night. So I want to I am honored to actually introduce a good friend of mine who, when I spent many years at the State House, and you'll probably hear this a couple of times tonight, but I had the pleasure of working with Senator Feingold when he was a state representative, and he was always open to my ideas, concerns, always willing to talk, always came down to my office. We always had some good chats, and I know how hard he works for his constituencies in the Commonwealth, and I know he's doing a great job up there as the senator. So I'm going to read a little introduction, and then I'm going to open it up to him. So Barry Feingold was raised in Andover and Tewksbury. He graduated from F&M. What is F&M? All right, F&M with a major in government and business concentration. Once he returned to Andover, he was elected to the Board of Selectmen at the age of 24. A year later, in 1996, he won the election to the Massachusetts House of Representatives as a Democrat representing the 17th Essex District, consisting of parts of Andover, Tewksbury, and Lawrence. After 14 years in the House, Feingold was elected to the State Senate, where he's now in his second term and is the chair of Election Laws Committee. Feingold also holds a law degree from the Massachusetts School of Law and an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School. He continues to work as a partner at his law firm, Dalton and Feingold in Andover. He lives in Andover with his wife, Amy, and three children, Ava, Ella, and Max. And Senator Feingold is running for treasurer.
Thank you. He was very humble and modest. I used to go down to him asking him to do things. So I worked for Sal, and they're very good to me. And I also want to recognize your great state rep, two representatives here, really great, who've really done a great job for Jay and Aaron. And I especially want to recognize Aaron because we just passed one of the most progressive, monumental election law reform bills. And this was something that Aaron started off when he was chair of election laws. And now, as a result of his work, we're going to have early voting in this state. We're going to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register. We're going to have better online registration. And finally, we're going to come back to the 21st century in Massachusetts. So I really applaud the work he did. And we're going to have a bill signing tomorrow to make our election laws a lot better than they are right now. So, So I just wanted to just give you, a little bit of my background. Dan was nice enough to give you some of it. So my family started off in the Georgetown housing projects in Hyde Park. It wasn't until my dad got a job in the North Shore at the Northern Essex Community College that my family moved up to the North Shore. And then my mom got a job at the Andover Public Schools, where she was a special education teacher for 30 plus years. Sainthood for her for being a special education teacher. One of the most noble professions going to teaching. So as I tell people, I didn't grow up a rich kid. I didn't grow up a poor kid. I truly grew up a middle-class kid. And when you grow up a middle-class kid, you learn very early on in life that if you want anything, you have to work hard. So I was that typical kid. When I was 10 years old, I had paper route delivering the Boston Globe at 5 in the morning. When I was going to college, I loaded trucks at 3 in the morning to pay for my college education. And when I wanted to go to law school, I worked 2 jobs during the day, one which is in banking to help pay for my law school education. And then when I was done with that, I scraped together every nickel and dime to start my own law firm and title company. And 15 years later, now we have 25 plus people that work with us. My wife is also a small business owner. She owns a women's clothing store in Andover as well. And the reason why I mention that is we face a very difficult Republican opponent in the fall. And what this person's going to be talking about is all the jobs that he has created. But he can't say that about me. I've created jobs, my wife has created jobs, and we have a lot of experience making a payroll, dealing with unemployment insurance, dealing with health care, and we understand finance in the private sector. So you might be wondering, so what made me go into the public sector? Well, back in 1992, now still in college, I went to the Democratic National Convention. And I saw this young governor from Arkansas speak. You might know who that is. And I was inspired. I was like, wow, this stuff's pretty cool. And I said, you know what? I want to get involved in public service too. And I thought I was going to work in Washington. But one of my mentors sat me down and said, Barry, if you're serious about helping people, you should go back home. And home for me was Massachusetts. So as Dan was saying, I started off as a member of the Board of Selectmen in the town of Andover, where I was the youngest member ever elected. Worked on issues like municipal finance and school building construction, 2 things that you do as treasurer. After that, I was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives. I'm now part of a famous class. I was elected in 1997. Marty Walsh was part of our class as well. Gino Flaherty, some other good people. And I was on the Ways and Means Committee and the Taxation Committee. And the reason why I mention that is one of the most important things that you do as treasurer is you present state finances to the credit rating agency. And I have experience to do that. And my goal is to get the state as good of a bond rating as possible so it's cheaper to borrow money for roads, bridges, and schools. After that, I was elected to the Massachusetts State Senate. And one of the areas that I have focused on is financial literacy. Because in our state, we have way too many people losing their houses to foreclosure and to bankruptcy. And I've seen firsthand when financial literacy programs really work. So I want to make sure we continue these programs as well. I was talking to Allison, and we've worked together for many years. She just got done with law school. She has $280,000 in debt. We are leaving a generation behind of kids. $280,000 to buy a house for them. We have to do better. We have to make sure that our public institutions remain affordable. We have to have better loan forgiveness programs. And we have to make sure young people understand what they're getting themselves into. So I want to be a treasurer that's active, that makes sure that we're helping young people so we are not leaving a generation behind. I also want to make sure that we have the best school building authority. City of Boston, it's been a long time since they've had a lot of school building projects. I want to work with the city to make sure they do. And I want to make sure that we are able to build as many schools as we can. But ultimately, whoever comes up here, whether running for Attorney General, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, any office, I think there should be one question that you should ask them. And that question is, if their backs are against the wall, will they stand tall for the values that all of you believe in? I just want to tell you a quick story of something I experienced. Well, when I was elected to the Massachusetts House when I was 25, in my hometown of Andover, where most of the votes are from, I won the town of Andover by 8 votes. I did so well that I got the nickname Landslide Feingold. And it wasn't for my overwhelming success. So I understood that I was going to have a very difficult time getting reelected. And I wasn't in office for maybe more than 4 months. And unfortunately, there was a murder of a young boy. And people were very upset. And people were very angry. And there was a big push to reinstitute the death penalty. Now, as a freshman lawmaker, I never voted on this before. And then one day, the late Governor Paul Cellucci was doing a press conference. And he said, "Governor, what are you doing to get the death penalty passed?" And his response is, "I'm calling out freshman lawmakers." They followed up with another question. He said, "Well, who have you called?" Well, who do you think drew the short straw that day? It was called by the late Governor Paul Cellucci. Yours truly. And after that, I couldn't go anywhere without people telling me how I should vote and what I should do. And right before the vote came out, I got a call. Now, actually, this is back in the 90s. Actually, I used to have a pager. I actually got paged and called them back. And they said to me, "Barry, we know the vote's going to be close. And if you vote for the death penalty, we're going to get all of our friends, all of our neighbors, do everything we can to help you get reelected. But if you vote no, we're going to get all of our friends, all of our neighbors, do everything we can to beat you in the next election." So I had a decision to make. But in my heart of hearts, I knew not only was the death penalty wrong for Massachusetts, but I felt it was wrong for this country, and I voted no. But what I didn't know, when the final vote came around, when all said and done with, the vote would be 80 to 80. It would fail by 1 vote. So after that vote, I said to myself, well, I had a couple good months here. I better start looking for another job, because obviously my re-election prospects didn't look too good. And right away, a Republican decided to run against me because I was soft on crime and I didn't listen to people in my district. But fast forward to election day, and I remember being out in the polls, and a guy came up to me and he said, "Barry, I am so angry with you about your vote on the death penalty." And I said, I know, and I figured this would go on all day. Then he turned around at me. He said, "You know what, though? I voted for you." I looked at him and I said, "You voted for me?" He says, "That's right. Because when you made that vote, you didn't do what you thought was going to get you reelected. You did what you thought was right. And for that, you earned my vote." I would go on that day to win by 66% of the vote. The largest a Democrat has ever won the 17th Essex District. And I learned a lesson that day, that you stand tall, no matter what. And throughout my career as a legislator, I stood tall. When it came to marriage equality, I stood tall. When it came to giving people health care, I stood tall. When it came to preserving our environment, I stood tall. And if you give me the chance, I will always stand tall as your next state treasurer. My name is State Senator Barry Feingold. I'm running for state treasurer, and I will believe I'll be a treasurer that you can trust. Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd like to open it up to the floor for anyone who has questions for the senator.
Yeah, you can ask me anything about state treasurer stuff. You can ask me anything about state senate stuff. Just don't ask me any questions about the Red Sox, because I really don't know.
Actually, I'm Mary Gorgo. I live in the West End. Actually, I'm a government employee.
Right.
So I was wondering if you have any kind of grandiose plans to change the pension system?
No, well, first of all, I want to make sure that we preserve what we have and make sure we get good returns for our retirees. And I must admit, I have some kind of self-interest in that. I do want to get invited back to Thanksgiving Day dinner. So if my parents don't get their retirement checks, I think they're going to be a little upset with me. So no, I am tired of people, criticizing people that get pensions, because what people don't realize is that my parents don't get Social Security. They don't. And what we don't do as a state, we don't pay 6.25% for Social Security. What we do is we give money towards pensions. And if all of a sudden we got rid of the pension funds, it'd be a lot more expensive to pay for Social Security. So I do want to preserve what's there. I want to make sure that what you're paid into will be there when you retire.
My name is Tracy Clance, and I live right by North Station. Question for you. You were talking about the bond rating presentations.
Yeah.
So what can you actually do to increase to improve the ratings? And what kind of presentation do you think would actually make a difference? You know, what the numbers are, what the numbers
Well,
are.
first of all, I'll say Treasurer Grossman's done a great job in this area. I mean, in so many other areas in what he's done. Obviously, we have a great rating, AA+. We'd love to get to AAA. That is a huge hurdle to get to. But what we need to do is we need to do everything we can to deal with our unfunded pension liability. Right now, we have a good plan, trying to put up to $130 million a year. We have a lot of debt, trying to get that under control. So I think those are areas that we need. But the biggest thing is we have to have fiscal prudence, work with the Senate President, work with the members of the House Speaker, and just make sure that our fiscal outlook is smart and we're just balancing our books.
Any other questions? I want to take this opportunity to thank the Senator.
Can I say one last
You sure
thing?
can.
Well, Tip O'Neill made a line very famous. He ran for office and he lost. He went to his next door neighbor, knocked on her door and said, "How come you didn't vote for me?" You know what she said? "Because you didn't ask." My last thing I just want to ask, if you're a delegate, I'd love to have your vote on June 14th. If not, I'd love to have your vote on September 9th. And if you're both, I'd really like to have both of them. So thank you so much.
I want to welcome for being here tonight, and I have a little introduction that Blake was kind enough to get from your website, so if I can read it and make a formal introduction. Our Attorney General, Martha Copley, who is running for governor this year, she was born and raised in North Adams. If anyone doesn't know where that is, that's way out, okay?
Pretty
far. North Adams, Mass. She went to Williams College to further her undergraduate degree and received her JD from the Boston University School of Law. After law school, she went on to be a prosecutor before serving for 8 years as Middlesex District Attorney, the largest county in the Commonwealth, where she established herself as a passionate advocate for public safety. In 2006, she was elected Attorney General and was re-elected in 2010. As Attorney General, she led the effort to successfully challenge the Defense of Marriage Act, tackle fraud and corruption, champion major initiatives to address the cost of health care and energy, and recovered hundreds of millions of dollars back for the Commonwealth's taxpayers. Attorney General currently lives in Medford with her husband Thomas, and in her spare time she's an avid reader and enjoys downhill skiing. I don't know if you're going to try snowboarding soon.
No, I'm too late.
Okay. Walking her dog's Labrador retrievers, and kayaking on the Mystic Lake. So a warm welcome for our Attorney General.
And the aforesaid Thomas O'Connor is with me tonight from Medford. And sometimes we talk about our two labs, Jefferson and Jackson, but they're not with me tonight. So thank you all for coming out on this beautiful evening. And I just want to talk briefly about the reasons I'm so excited about where Massachusetts is headed and how I think that as we move this economy ahead, Massachusetts can be prosperous and fair. We can turn this economy around for everybody, not just people at the top, not just Wall Street, and frankly, not just Boston and Cambridge, as much as I love you all. It's important that we go out west and we look at Holyoke and Springfield and Lawrence and New Bedford, and we are going to be able to do that here because I think that we've made and can make the investments in our kids and our workforce that will let us create a future on our own terms. So when I came in for Attorney General, I ran on a platform of promoting a healthy economy. Governor Patrick also believed, I think, that he'd have more resources available to do the kinds of things that we as Democrats want. Equality for everybody, opportunity, good education, good jobs. Wall Street had other ideas. They gambled with our money, they lost it, they wrecked our economy, and they got bailed out, we did not. And we are still working to rebuild what they left behind. They took our houses, they took our homes. And as we tried in the Attorney General's office with AGs around the country to bring back money to the state, to prevent unnecessary foreclosures and keep people in their homes, we've seen how difficult a struggle that has been. And even as the economy turns around and Wall Street's doing very well, those CEOs, their bonuses are back up where they were before. Investors are doing well. It has not helped us in the middle class and those who need more help at the bottom to be able to restore that economy. So I believe that this time we should build a healthy economy on our terms, with what we want in our cities and towns across Massachusetts, with what we're lucky to have here, because we have a lot of startups, we have an innovation economy, we have high-tech, biotech. biotech, we have tech, but we also have a great history in healthcare and financial services and a return of precision manufacturing here in Massachusetts. And I believe that if we invest in our kids, if we invest in our workforce, we're going to be able to both see that growth of the economy and provide for the opportunity for everybody to get the education they need and get on that ladder to where I know as Democrats we believe people should have equal opportunity, we should be fair. It's why, as Attorney General, I did fight Wall Street for fairness. And it's why, as Attorney General, I challenged the Defense of Marriage Act, because I said, and I think we believe in Massachusetts, that we had determined that people should marry who they love. And the federal government said otherwise. It was an uphill battle, but we brought that suit and we won it. And it's been good for families here in Massachusetts. It has strengthened our families. I've had a chance out on the trail to talk to folks about what their hopes and fears are. Just recently, I met a young man who was with his 4-year-old son, Connor. I started talking to him in Plymouth. And he told me that his wife worked full-time. He worked full-time. He had Saturday off. His wife was a nurse. Their son, Connor, 4 years old, was more interested in his cell phone than he was in me, but he was keeping himself amused. And he said his 14-year-old son was down the road taking karate lessons while he was taking a break. He said, my wife and I lost our home in 2006 to foreclosure, but we're slowly building our credit back up. We're excited about trying to buy a house in Plymouth. We want our kids to have a good education. I'm sending my son to karate because it helps him develop self-esteem and he's doing better in school. And I thought, this is the kind of young couple that our future is in Massachusetts. It's the kind of folks I fought for as a district attorney, as an attorney general. People who want a shot at fairness and an opportunity to build a life, even though they've had economic struggles. They are optimistic about where they're going to go and where their kids are going to go. And I want everybody in this state to have that opportunity, to feel that the future is ahead and they're going to have a good chance to do well in it. If we have universal pre-K, if we extend our school day so kids have a chance to learn science, technology, engineering, math, and maybe some time for arts, and recess once in a while, instead of focusing all of our time and teachers on teaching people to the test, but focus on teaching our kids how to get excited about learning and what the future is going to be. That's where our future is in Massachusetts. And you know, in 2012, fewer than 600 kids took advanced placement in computer science in Massachusetts. So in the state that thinks we're ahead of the curve, that's not really that good. If you are going to work for Google or Facebook or some other innovation job, or you're going to work for National Grid, if you're out fixing a wire in the middle of a storm, you're on a pole that has a computer on top. And if you don't learn, if we don't teach computer science, we're going to be at the disadvantage for those jobs in the future. And I know, visiting Malden High School, Paul Marks teaches a class in coding. Many of those kids are first generation. They don't necessarily speak English as their first language, but they were really excited about what they were learning in their coding class with Mr. Marks. And they said to me, Mr. Marks teaches us how to walk and we learn how to fly. I thought, this is what we want for all of our kids, to be really excited about what they're learning and how they're going to use those skills. I visited the Lynn Vocational Technical School the other day. Those kids are doing co-ops, they're learning manufacturing, they're doing early childhood education. They all come to school on time. They are all working jobs. And one of the kids said, I've got a full scholarship to Bucknell. And those kids in the past who might not have gone to a 2-year school or a 4-year school are all looking forward to more education and good jobs. That's what we can and we should be doing here in Massachusetts for every child. Give them the opportunity to find what their dream is, whatever that is, and be able to follow it. I had that opportunity. I feel lucky to be able to do that. I want that for everybody here. And I know as Democrats, we believe in that. And most importantly, we can do that in Massachusetts. One other thing I just want to mention. I know there are a lot of issues. We have to address climate change. There are a lot of things that we can address as we move forward in Massachusetts. But I believe that in 2014, that we here in Massachusetts should be treating mental and behavioral health care the way we do diabetes and cardiac disease. That we should be able to look at providing access and care for people who suffer from mental behavioral health. I mentioned my opportunity growing up. We had, my dad and mom cared a lot about education. 5 kids, 4 girls and a boy. They believe their daughters should chart their way in life as well as their son. We all got to go to school. My brother Edward at age 17 was smart, he was funny, played the piano. He started to show signs of depression and bipolar disease. He wouldn't get treatment, he wouldn't take medication. He believed that there'd be a stigma attached to that. He said, if I do that, I won't be able to hold a job. And unfortunately, as a result of that, he didn't hold a job and he couldn't maintain relationships. And after my folks passed away 20 and 22 years ago, 18 years ago, he committed suicide. And, you know, we lived with that. It was difficult for my brother, it was difficult for us. And I know, I'm not gonna even ask for a show of hands. We all have friends, colleagues, relatives, children who suffer from mental illness, who suffer from behavioral health. We know that often that is compounded by alcohol or addiction issues. And if we are able to address what we need to for mental and behavioral health, when we see it, in 3rd grade or 8th grade or high school or for young adults, for mental health illnesses for our veterans who are returning with post-traumatic stress, that is where we should be investing our resources here in this state. And we can and will have a better Massachusetts. So I am excited about our opportunities. As I said, not just in Boston and Cambridge, but in the Merrimack Valley and the South Shore, in Worcester, Springfield, out in North Adams, where I grew up, to make this economy turn around, provide for the education and workforce development on our terms, not on Wall Street's. And that's how we build sustainable economies for our kids, for our grandchildren, and for theirs. I know we can do it here in Massachusetts. I'd like your help at the convention. If you're a delegate, I'd like your help in your vote in the primary. Most importantly, we all know we need a Democratic governor come November, so I appreciate that you're interested and you're here tonight. We've got a great field of primary candidates. We've all had a great time running, but I hope you will look closely at who will be able to help turn this economy around for everybody. I'd like your help to do that. When I graduated from law school, my dad gave me a plaque that said, sometimes the best man for the job is a woman. And I'd like to be that, your next governor. Thank you all very much.
I'd like to open up for questions. However, I'd like to take a shot at the first one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And this is a question that came up earlier, this came up in our last session, is the epidemic with heroin overdoses. And we see a lot of our young kids, and not even young kids and young adults, heroin has no age limit, and a lot of them are overdosing. Is there a plan, and what are your thoughts in terms of working with healthcare providers to make sure they get the proper treatment and they can stay in the treatment longer rather than detox for 5 days and then 30 days? And part 2 of it, we've seen on the news a lot of folks trying. We had a woman who lost her son to an overdose, and she tried so hard in the Boston Municipal Court in the Central Division to Section 35 her child, and Section 35 would be just an evaluation to that they're a danger to themselves. And there was because there are requirements, you have to meet that threshold, and unfortunately the judge and it meets that threshold. Is your thoughts on the type of change in Section 35, or any thoughts of helping these families get their child into more care?
Sure. Well, let me say that I back in 1986, when I first started working up in the Lowell District Court as an assistant district attorney in Middlesex County, started to see in that population a certain percentage of people who used heroin. We saw needles on the street on the way into the courthouse. We had a certain number of people who were arrested for heroin use, not selling heroin, but heroin use of just possession of a needle was a crime at the time. And it occurred to me at the time that these were people who had broken into houses and cars, and they had been charged with a crime because they admitted a crime, but the underlying problem was one that related to the addiction issue. That at that time was something we thought was something else. These are people who were heroin addicted folks. We don't see them everywhere. We manage it, try to manage it. But what happened in the late 90s, really through the 90s, was prescription drugs like OxyContin, which was heroin in a pill. And because it was prescribed widely, and because it was used as a recreational drug, and because it was easy to crush, and because it wasn't like shooting up, it was like taking a vitamin pill, we started then with an epidemic of people who became addicted to painkillers for a bunch of reasons. We prescribed it, If you had a toothache, you'd get a pill of 30, you maybe needed 2. Somebody took it. I heard recently, realtors told me that if there's an open house, the parents come in to look at the house, and the kids are going to the medicine cabinet to see if there's drugs in there. So through that time period, as we have more and more people using prescription drugs like that, we have this new highly addictive drug called Zohydro, which the governor tried to stop. We went to court. They said, no, the federal government tells you what to do. I spent a lot of time suing the federal government these days, by the way. But so long story short, we have created over this period of time a use of kinds of drugs that we think of like vitamins or over-the-counter that are highly addictive. And an expert told me recently that for at least 30% of the population, the use of that kind of drug will be potentially highly addictive. Not everybody gets addicted to it, but we never know how or exactly who does. So we need to do more on the control of those drugs. We haven't done enough on doctors who overprescribe, pharmacists who don't watch the drugs, and we've had drugs that have come up from Florida with hijacking, and they're sold on the street. When people can't afford those drugs, $30, $40 a pill, they turn to heroin, $4 a bag, it's cheaper. And now we've seen heroin that is bad, that is dangerous, with overdose that are killing people. So the use of these drugs and then the turning to heroin is in parts of our society, ages, demographics we've just never seen before. So the first thing is better control, but the second thing you've pointed out comes to my point, which is we are supposed to provide for insurance and health care for people who have addiction, who have health care problems, and we haven't done it. We don't have enough beds. We have too many emergency rooms that are clogged with people, and then they're released too soon. And we have an epidemic now in all parts of Massachusetts, and I know from talking to AGs, it's worse in other parts of the country, but it doesn't make us feel any better, and we need to address it. We need to recognize it, we need to get the numbers, we need to provide for more funding and intervention for people who are addicted. And we need to do more research around who gets addicted and why, and how we actually get people off this. But people, you've seen now, if you follow this, that many more police departments and fire departments are carrying Narcan around to save people's lives. That's a good thing in the short run, but it's not a solution to this problem of fairly widespread addiction that now spreads to using dangerous drugs in the street like heroin that are going to result in deaths. So we haven't focused on it, we need to do a lot more than we're doing.
Thank you. I'd like to open up to the floor. I'm going to start with Rebecca.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Griffin. I live in the North End. I have 3 young children at the Elliott School, Boston Public School. And I heard you say longer school day, and I just kind of glazed over because I would like you to speak to that a little bit. I'm very concerned about the testing society that we have become. Absolutely. It seems absurd. It doesn't seem age appropriate on many levels. It seems like we are limiting our educators. It seems like we are manufacturing testers, not whole people.
I totally agree with that.
And so I don't want a longer school day. I just wonder why elected officials are saying, let's have a longer school day.
Well, you don't want a longer school day that looks like the school day your kids have now, I assume. But part of what we've seen, particularly with innovation schools and private schools and charter schools, which we started, by the way.
Ours is an innovation school, and we're trying to get a longer school day, and I don't get it.
So what if we were able to say we're going to turn away from this constant teaching to the testing, but allow for art, music, recreation, sports, the kinds of things that we used to get that would give kids the opportunity to get up and move around.
With all due respect, our school day when I was a child was the same length, and I had arts, music, science, PE. And those things, many of those things are now extra, you know, they're not mandated, they're not state mandated, they are extras, and that is absurd to me.
Well,
yep, no, I hear you. The same length of school day today is the same length of school day when it hasn't gotten longer. So why now does it need to be longer?
Well, I think what we've said is that we want our kids to be more proficient. Remember, the ed reform was around doing kinds of testing so we could be diagnostic. What do our kids know? Where are they? How do they compare to each other? what's happened, and this I take from talking to parents and teachers all around the state, is that the testing itself has become an end in itself, and it has become both a ceiling and a floor of what kids are learning. And because we've done that, we've crowded out those other things that I think are valuable, and I think most people do for kids. Having the opportunity to take art or music, or to do more, especially in the older grades. I don't know, what age are your children?
5th grade, 3rd grade, and K1. And so I guess we are teaching to the test to a large extent. Why don't we just stop that?
Well, that's...
instead of making a longer school?
No, and so fair enough. And I agree that we need to change what we're doing in terms of teaching to the test. And I don't think overnight that every school is going to become longer. But I do know that from looking at kids who have fallen behind, who haven't had universal pre-K, or who don't get help at home with schoolwork, it's a way to build in for, particularly for those kids, the opportunity to have a mentor, to do their homework, to do the kinds of things in a safe setting that they don't get to do now because all they're doing is testing and they don't get the other opportunities. And so I am the first one to go to teachers and parents about what we want. And I'm not saying that kids have to be in school till midnight. But we know that the results for kids, not just on tests, but the results of kids who are excited about learning, who go on to further education, who are able to get the skills they need and the help they need when they have trouble with math or English, is built into a more structured day, not more testing day, but more opportunity for different kinds of learning. And so we have a lot of talking to do about it, and this is still in an experimental stage. But I think you're one of the best people to talk to. You've got kids at those age groups, and not every parent and every set of parents is able to provide opportunities for kids after school. So what we'd like to do is have the range that will give all of our kids the best opportunity to be excited about learning, like those kids I talked about in Malden. So parents should be involved. There's got to be grassroots. What it shouldn't be is driven by corporate testing businesses that are making a lot of money off of this, that are driving a lot of what we're doing in the name of best practices, but really isn't for our kids.
Dave, you got a question?
My name is David Marks. I serve on the North End Waterfront Neighborhood Council. The issue of tax credits can be quite a divisive issue and a bit of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. On the one hand, I think you can make arguments in favor of tax credits, such as what we had that was signed into legislation back in, I think, approximately 2006 or 2007 for the film industry, so that we can compete with other states that are both well-known for film and also maybe not so well-known, such as Connecticut and Louisiana, for example. And it also spurs a lot of economic, even if it's short-term, a lot of jobs, people are patronizing businesses and whatnot.
Johnny Depp's over in Cambridge today.
Exactly, great example. On the other hand, the part that can be very divisive, if that's not already divisive in and of itself, it is when it comes to the tax credits that are doled out to supposedly very wealthy, big commercial real estate developers. And a lot of people will make the argument, why do we need to offer them tax incentives to build and come to Massachusetts and build high-end, whether it's luxury condos, mixed-use development? What would you say to those people? What would be an argument in favor of that? Because I personally don't necessarily think that those demographics, so to speak, necessarily need those types of tax credits.
Well, that's fair enough. It's a good question. It's a complicated question, so let me see if I can do it in a short way. One of the things that I tried to avoid in law school was taxation, but I knew I was going to have to study it on the bar exam. So much to my delight, I found the tax courses very interesting because how we provide for tax structures and tax credits, how we shape that actually drives people's behavior, right? We are all kind of driven by, at some level, whether people get married or not, do they file jointly? It's one of the issues around the Defense of Marriage Act, because we were creating different tax structures for people at the state level, the federal level, and that didn't seem right either. So quickly to your answer, certain policies get set by legislators at certain times. I feel that it's important, and I would as governor coming in, to look at that whole array of who gets a tax credit and why. Is it still serving the purpose originally it was supposed to? Are they accountable for it? Is it valuable to the Commonwealth to do it? And if we give people tax credits and it isn't, there's got to be clawback provisions. So that if they get a credit but then take it off or don't use it, then the state should be able to recoup that. So the tax credit is the opposite of a tax, a money giveaway, so some of it is bookkeeping. But I think for the next governor, whoever she may be, I think it's important to take a look at that precisely because our economy's changed and who and to whom we want to give those credits probably does change. We want to look at smart growth, and we want to look at ways in areas across the state we can find what kind of housing infrastructure developments do we need. And that's where I think a good discussion on what those tax credit policies should look like. But it's a good question, it's an important one, and I think we should always periodically review what is happening, what incentive are we giving people around tax credits.
I'd like to open up one more question off. I know I see two folks, but because we're running a little behind, but go right ahead if you don't mind introducing yourself.
My name is Felicia Kapucha, and I live here in the North End. I'm going to be an add-on delegate at the convention.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I was just wondering, I just finished law school and I'm going to be taking the bar in July. I know from a lot of my friends, there's just an abundance of supply. We have plenty of lawyers, but this is my point. We have plenty of lawyers, but we have way too many people that need lawyers that can't afford them. So given your experience in the AG's office, do you have any specific plans to bridge that gap to expand access to justice?
Yes, and one of the things that we found, for instance, in the foreclosure crisis, was that we could help certain people just getting a loan modification to stay in their homes, but many people had one or two or three other problems. They were in the middle of a divorce, for instance, or there was a title problem, and so they needed additional help to clear that up in order to get the loan modification. One of the things we did with some of the money we brought back was provide to our legal services corporations grant funds that allowed them to bring on contract lawyers and other lawyers to address those issues. What we found in doing that was there was a great still infrastructure in Massachusetts of legal services, although those have been cut periodically. I think for all of the issues we talked about, people who need representation in a Section 35, people who may be not indigent enough to get a defense counsel if they're charged with a crime but can't afford a lawyer. There are lots of opportunities and models in other states. And I would like to see, particularly for new attorneys, good luck on the bar, by the way. It was the worst summer of my life. I don't need to ruin yours, but I'm sure you'll do well. I would like to find a way for lawyers to get good experience, good practice, both in public service and otherwise. And ways we could do that are looking at providing more sort of either sliding scale, services, both civil and criminal, for people who need those services. And I think the state should play a role with that. I think the bar associations do some, but I think we need to do more. And as we look at, healthcare as a right and not a privilege, I think because we have a system built on laws and so much of it requires maneuvering through a system, we could have an opportunity to give you experience, learn how to help people, but also provide those services, whether it's in guardian ad litem provisions, in probate court. There's a whole variety of places where we could do much better providing legal services and giving folks an opportunity. There's other ways, I think, both for undergraduates and for law students to look at what the state could do in terms of loan forgiveness. If you're willing to take on a public service sector job that usually pays less, but may give you more experience and may be more fulfilling as undergraduates who want to go into policing or fire or teaching, and say, we'll get people who wouldn't ordinarily consider those careers, get people in public service in a way to decrease their debt and spread the sorts of people who have opportunities to work in our cities and towns in public service. So, good question and good luck.
Thank you
I hope
very
you
much.
pass the bar.
I'll give you an opportunity for a quick question, quick answer.
Well,
Within
I
30
don't
seconds
know.
wrap up.
So a few of us, 2 weeks ago, asked a number of questions about climate change of some of your competitors. They said all the right things. I'm not here to criticize any of their statements. But in the meantime, the report was issued this week that called a 10-foot rise in sea levels inevitable. That's a problem here in the North End. It's easy to feel hopeless. So can you give us hope? And
Well,
can
let
you
me
do things
try.
about it?
Let me try. We actually were just talking earlier today, and I've heard this a couple of times about all of this wonderful development in the Innovation District. Somebody said we're also calling it the Inundation District because if Sandy had been up here, a different course, or in 5 years we get that big storm, there will be a huge problem, particularly in low-lying areas, not just in Boston, but all along the coast. We know our office was the one that went to the Supreme Court back in 2004, 2005, and said, we're losing a foot of Cape Cod every year. You know, climate change is real. We need the EPA to regulate our use of carbon and because of climate change. It has been an issue that's been difficult for people to both grasp and get angry about or concerned about because, look, we all have daily lives and it seems like something in the distance, and as sad as it is about those polar bears, we don't have them here. You know, so it's been a tricky issue for me. But I think we all recognize, we've seen it here in Massachusetts, we've seen what happened with some people call it global weirding, the strange patterns that we're seeing in the destruction. So we need to, obviously, and I give the governor great credit for the Global Warming Act and our Green Communities Act, ways in which we both increase our efficiency, cut our use of energy, but everybody has to be engaged in that. We have to have all of our businesses and individuals say, we're going to decrease the use of fossil fuel. That will at least stop the mitigation, or hopefully we'll put a halt to it. And we are going to need some of our best and brightest to make those estimates. And also, I think, say what we should be doing about additional building in Boston or on rural areas, not just homes, but big buildings, because they will be at risk. But we need the science community and we need engineers, we need a multidisciplinary group to say, we have a problem now, we need to mitigate it as best we can, and this is how we will do it. We have goals in Massachusetts, we need to stick to them. And we also need to have people, as you have said, you know, I'm not a scientist, so I can't give you all that much hope, but I can say I think there are ways that we can have folks who say there are ways to reverse this. If we put our minds to it and we know what the science says about how to do it. So thank you all very much, everybody.
Just quickly before we go on, I just want to congratulate Ward 3 Zone and North End Waterfront Zone. Connor Finley recently graduated from Suffolk University, so I just wanted to Our next candidate is Leland Chung. He's a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I'll just read a quick bio before we go on, and thank you for your patience. Leland Chung has served on the Cambridge City Council since 2009. Before assuming his role as City Councilor, Chung worked as a senior associate at Masthead Partners, a Cambridge-based venture capital firm focused on digital media, mobile, and internet infrastructure. Chung was first elected to the council while pursuing a master's in public administration at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and also holds an MBA from MIT, the Sloan School of Management. Throughout his tenure on the Cambridge City Council, Chung has remained committed to maintaining a style of progressive and innovative leadership that is akin to the moral, cultural, and intellectual climate of the surrounding communities. He currently lives in Cambridge with his wife and their infant daughter, Lulu Marie. Leland Chung.
And thank you for your flexibility, and I apologize for having to run a bit late. And thanks to all of you for showing up and for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's great to see some familiar faces in the crowd. You know, I should start. I was asked at a. I should also mention I've also been honored to have received the endorsement of Senator Petrocelli, who represents a good portion of your ward. He's been a great friend and also represents part of Cambridge, so he's seen the work that I've done. It's the reason why he decided to endorse me in this race. I was asked a few weeks ago at one of the forums, why are you in politics in the first place? And my answer was, it goes back to the psychological tricks your parents play on you as a kid. To explain that, my father immigrated to Massachusetts in 1969. He was living in Harvard Square, putting himself through school at Boston University at a time when you could still do that. And walking through the square each day, the activism, the engagement he saw on the streets was unlike anything he'd ever known before. And he became absolutely determined to instill in my sister and I an appreciation for not just how lucky we were that he moved here, but an appreciation for the freedom and the opportunity that America offers. So every few years, he took the entire family back to China to visit relatives still living there, and I was kind of like the rabble-rousing kid who would point at pictures of Mao on the mantle and ask why, Tiananmen Square wasn't that a bad idea. But I learned there, seriously, that most of the world does not get to enjoy the same kind of freedoms we so often take for granted. My cousins in China can't run for office because they think they have something different to offer. They can't write an op-ed criticizing a government official's decision without risking reprisal on themselves or their family. They can't do what all of us are doing tonight, which is gathering at a grassroots level and asking questions of the candidates who would potentially represent us. So I thank you for all taking the time to come out and listen to me and to do what you do. My parents not only pushed me to recognize the importance of civic participation, they also pushed me to study and work hard. And it wasn't always fun having a tiger mother and a dragon dad, but it got me through school at Stanford and later, as was mentioned, Harvard and MIT, which all led to opportunities to work in venture capital, investing in companies here in Massachusetts that were creating jobs and improving lives, from clean tech to mobile to internet infrastructure. But in 2009, the lessons of my youth were still tugging at me, and I wanted to be doing more than just the volunteer work I was doing. And so I was originally going to volunteer on a campaign and decided to run for myself because nobody was talking about the issues I thought were most important. Namely, everyone was talking about Kendall Square and the innovation economy that I've been a part of, but no one was talking about how to make sure that it's benefiting every single person in our community. People were talking about the jobs it was bringing, the companies were attracting, but no one was talking about the kids growing up in public housing literally 2 blocks away from Microsoft and Google who weren't getting the education or the training or the mentorship they needed to when they worked there. No one was talking about the entrepreneurs, the business owners across the city of Cambridge who didn't get to have the connections to get their business up and going, regardless if they had an MIT PhD or a 2-year degree or a GED. So I ran for the council. 2009 was elected. And over the past 5 years, I've earned a reputation as one of the most progressive, productive, responsive members of the council. I stood shoulder to shoulder with union members, fighting for fair wages and equitable treatment from some of our largest employers. I fought to improve our educational system with after-school STEM programming, teaching them science and math, computer science, universal pre-K, making sure that the 30% of our kids who live in public housing and go to our public schools but don't have internet at home get it, and they will be, thanks to a new partnership we've had with the Housing Alliance. And I've been a bridge builder. I had the first ever joint meeting between the Boston and Cambridge City Councils in the history of Boston and Cambridge. It was mind-blowing that this was even possible, given how long our cities have been around. But to try and find some common solutions to our shared challenges. And I'll tell you that the Lieutenant Governor has historically been that connection between the governor's office and the cities and towns where the rubber meets the road. The state reps, state senators, city mayors, managers, selectmen, city councilors. And as the only person in this race who's currently elected, as the only person in this race with 5 years of experience on the Cambridge City Council under my belt, no matter what your top issue is, whether it's education, or housing for seniors to age in place, or divestment from fossil fuels, or the climate emergency, I not only have talking points, I have a track record. You can look up on the website, you can point to and look at, and be confident that day one, I'll be fighting for you effectively. I also say that 3 years ago, I wrote a letter to the Globe, an op-ed, criticizing the governor and the Secretary of Economic Development about a policy that I thought was pitting cities against each other as opposed to encouraging us to work together. The governor's reprisal to me, unlike what it would have been to my cousins in China, was to appoint me to the board of our state's Economic Development Agency. And through that, I've had the opportunity over the last 3 years to travel around the state, investing in places and people that have too often been left behind. And I've got to tell you, it's so often when you talk about the innovation economy or read about it in the Globe or the Boston Business Journal, they're talking about Boston versus Cambridge or Cambridge and Boston or how we compare to Silicon Valley. Well, if you put Silicon Valley on top of Massachusetts, it would literally stretch from Boston to the Berkshires. If we want to grow, if we want to compete in a globalized world, we can't just be creating job and opportunity in Boston and Cambridge. We need to be doing that, but we need to be thinking about the rest of the Commonwealth. Because frankly, the growth, if we're talking about 10x gross state product, GDP, it's not just going to come from Boston, Cambridge. We can't even fit all the startups we have starting in Cambridge. It's going to come from our gateway communities. It's going to come from the rest of the Commonwealth. And that's only going to happen if we invest across the Commonwealth in education, in innovation, in infrastructure. That's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. I think we're at a tipping point. You know, Governor Patrick has started us down this road of investing in education, innovation, infrastructure, and we can either double down on Deval's initiatives, or we're gonna go backwards with Baker. And so many places across the Commonwealth have these like skill sets and this expertise that, you know, they recently have lost jobs over offshoring, and they're this far away from being the most productive members in the world. And if we're willing to invest in education, I mean like at all levels, community colleges, putting our community colleges into the high schools, bringing employers to help do our training. If we're willing to make those investments, that's how we're going to compete on a global scale. That's the only way we're going to compete. I'll close by saying, because I want to leave some time for questions. You know, I need your help. I'm a little bit late to this race. I only announced in February, while other candidates were running around, meeting people like you, giving their stumps, meeting delegates. I have an 8-month-old daughter at home. And so I was holding my wife's hand through pregnancy, trying not to faint, and then afterwards trying to figure out how to put on diapers, and every time the size changes, it's like I'm learning all over again. But I finally get what my father must have felt, not when he decided to move here, but when he decided to stay here. And I think it's the feeling that every single parent feels. The responsibility to try and make sure that your child has even better opportunities to succeed than you do. That's why I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm not running because I couldn't get elected to another office. I'm running the Cambridge City Council. It's a pretty great job. I'm not running because I see this as a stepping stone. I'm running because I think the Lieutenant Governor has the opportunity to focus on a long-term problem and make solid progress towards getting us there. That's why I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. But I'll also say it won't happen unless we all work together. So I'm not just asking for your vote at the convention if you're a delegate. I'm not just asking for your vote in the primary. I'm not just asking you to support whoever the Democratic nominees are in November. I'm asking you to work with me next year as your Lieutenant Governor. Ever since I was first elected to the Cambridge City Council, my personal cell phone, my personal email have been on the city's website. I think these were handed out earlier. They also have my personal cell phone, my personal email. You will always have a direct line to me. I cannot change my number. My wife and my family would not be able to find me. So you will always have a direct line with me, but only by working together can we make sure that we're building a Commonwealth that helps all of us, but also helps make sure that we have a place that our kids will want to grow up in. And I'll close with one analogy. If your neighbor paints and improves their house, your home value goes up. It's the same thing with the Commonwealth. If we're willing to invest in each other, if we're willing to invest in the education of people who are looking for a job, if we're willing to invest in the rails and the roads and the bridges and the high-speed transit that connects us all, if we're willing to invest in making sure that we're creating jobs across the Commonwealth, we will all benefit. That's why I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. My name is Leland Chung. I would be honored to have your voice, your vote, your support, and your voice with me next year as your Lieutenant Governor. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Can I open it up to the floor to any questions?
I've heard a lot of things about Ward 3, so I know you're not shy. Go
I'm
ahead.
actually not from Ward 3.
Okay.
From outside of Boston and Sudbury. But I have a namesake manager. Quick question. You've talked about it. Other candidates have talked about universal pre-K and expanding opportunities for education. But I think, and you have a background, as you said, in business, and it seems if you look at development, a big issue is not just expanding opportunity, but making sure you account for inequality of opportunity. I know for myself, coming from Sudbury, we had the opportunities for a very strong education system, which allowed me to pursue, future opportunities. And so it's not just about expanding opportunities, making sure that those opportunities that I have or someone has in a different town are equal. So what would you do in terms of making sure that we don't just expand these opportunities, but we make sure that we have an equitable slate for everyone to pursue their dreams and their goals?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's all hands on deck. I think there's not like a silver bullet that we're going to use that's going to solve that problem. And when you talk about inequity, with a daughter at home, I worry about the pay inequity between men and women and how we're going to fix that by the time my daughter gets into the workforce or sooner. When we talk about inequity, the inequity between minorities and the majority is even larger. And when you talk about even if you dig even further, this whole Asians as a model minority, it's a myth. If you look at Asians, it's a bimodal distribution. You have some wealthy Asians, you have some poor Asians, and they average out to be a little bit higher, but you still predominantly a lot of people on that category that are in need. And you know, that model minority myth wasn't created by Asian Americans. It was created by the majority trying to separate out and divide minorities and say that if you're not an Asian, if you're African American, if you're Latino, whatever, it's your fault you're not succeeding because look at them, they're succeeding. Well, that's not true. And we're quickly becoming a majority-minority state. But if they're able to divide us, we're never going to succeed. But I think, to get back to your point, it's not just, it's about everything. So one part of it is in Springfield, there's an incubator where they've gone out to local businesses and they said, what do you need? What job openings do you have? What's the checklist of skills? And if we can find people with those skills, if we can train people, will you hire them? He said, yes. So then they started a program where they're doing classes to give people those skills and get them on a path not just for a job but a career. You know, it's another part is bringing the community colleges into the high schools. Why should a high schooler go to a community college to take remedial classes and just leave frustrated with $40,000, $50,000 worth of debt but no degree? Why can't we bring the community colleges into our high schools? Because frankly, having been on the Cambridge City Council, I know that a lot of youth just don't feel comfortable going out to places where they haven't been before to do the technical training. Because there's going to be an explosion in technical training as we move to with the Affordable Health Care Act and the focus on preventative medicine. All that stuff's run by machines, and that requires not really a bachelor's but technical training. Why are we investing in those kinds of programs to get people what we know will be careers, not just jobs? Why are we working with I mentioned the employers and bringing them and making sure they're helping us out with computer programming? Why are we working with our universities? It's all hands on deck. There's no silver bullet, but the reality is that we can identify the problem. I think we need to throw everything we have at that problem. And that's how we're going to compete, because Massachusetts will never, ever be a state that competes based on having low-skilled labor that big companies can come in and exploit. We're never going to be a state that competes based on giving away tax credits for companies to move here and then move away once those tax credits expire. We're going to be a state that competes based on having the best educated, the most productive, the highest skilled labor out of any place in the nation. And I think that's what we need to focus on. And if we do that, it'll pay dividends tomorrow, the next day, and for generations to come. So.
Any other questions? And then right here, and then we'll get to your question.
My name is Tracy Plains. I live in Golden Triangle. You said that you want to solve problems by throwing everything we have at it. And that sounds great, but how are we going to pay for it? Or how are you going to convince people to find a way to pay for it?
Yeah, I think the same way that I think we've done it in Cambridge. So 30 years ago, Cambridge was a failing gateway city. All right, we had manufacturing that was leaving the city. We were on the verge of bankruptcy. We were in debt. We have some of the best social programs of any big city in the state right now. All right. What people don't know, we also have one of the lowest tax rates of any big city in the Commonwealth. We spend more on education than any of the big cities. But how are we able to do that? It's because 35 years ago, we made decisions to focus on economic development. And not just putting everything all at once in a way that would just disrupt neighborhoods, but over time. And over time, so every year, we've been had to do a 2.5 override. And people say, oh, because you have MIT and Harvard. Well, you know what? UMass Lowell is one of 3 plastics engineering institutes in the entire world. You know, there's Yale you can point at. There's Berkeley you can point at. That's a simple answer that I don't think that fully encapsulates the truth. The reality is we partnered with MIT to take some vacant land and put up some incubators and buildings that we were able to move startups into, and that was helping manage our economic growth. But every year we're focused on bringing more companies in, and that's what's helping pay for our tax base. Instead of going back to the taxpayer, instead of going back to senior citizens who are on a fixed income and saying you got to pay more and more and more, we're growing our economy. But the growth is not going to come from Boston and Cambridge alone. It's pretty tight here already. The growth as a state is going to come from our gateway cities, from the communities in between, and that's only going to be possible if we're willing to invest in the infrastructure, the rails, the roads, the bridges that connect us all together, and the education of the people that live there, and in making sure that we're promoting this innovative skill sets that already reside there to attract companies to create jobs. So I think that, so when I say we're throwing everything at the wall, I think it's partially where, every city is different. Every city is going to have different skill sets that we're trying to build upon and grow. But that's my long-term vision for how we achieve these. And I think that's how we pay for it. Part of it is going to require some sacrifice today. But I think I'm interested in sacrificing today to invest in the future and what we know is going to pay dividends, what has been a proven model in Cambridge, and what we know we can expand to the rest of the Commonwealth.
I'd like to open up, just one more question, maybe one more minute. I know we have Mr. Keel waiting, and we have one more after this.
Again, my name is Manisha, I live in Ward 3. My question is, you kept mentioning, you were talking about innovation economy and infrastructure and all of these new technologies coming to the city. My question is, it seems to me like the foundation for all of these things and growth in that area would be a fiber optic internet, and instead of Comcast that is insanely priced, and that's the only option that we have.
Yeah.
So as Lieutenant Governor, what could you contribute to facilitate that effort?
Yeah. So I cut my stump speech short, so I usually include that in there. So that's thank you, thank you for asking that question. And I also, so first of all, I'll say the innovation economy is not just 20-something-year-olds typing in a computer. It's food trucks are part of the innovation economy. These vertical gardens that are going up in Springfield are part of the innovation economy. We have some people growing wheatgrass in their apartments in Cambridge and selling it to restaurants in these wheatgrass. That's part of the innovation economy. The innovation economy. I should probably more properly say as the economy of tomorrow encompasses a lot of different industries, a lot of different skill sets, and it's not just all about typing in great computers. But to answer your question on fiber, so one of the biggest projects that the State Economic Development Agency has done is this thing called mass broadband. And we've deployed a fiber network all across Western Massachusetts, all across the Cape. We started there because those were cities and towns that literally only had access to dial-up, not even Comcast. All right, and so far we've connected 1,200 libraries, town halls, schools that previously had nothing. And when we lived the network, it's about a year and a half ago, we were at a school in Otis. And it wasn't your typical ribbon cutting with the governor. He literally went and flipped the switch. And all of a sudden, we were on a video conference with these kids in Otis, some kids in South America, and NASA. Literally impossible the day before. And I think if you see those kids interacting and using the language skills, practicing their Spanish to try and communicate, you realize that's why we need to double down on Develop Patrick's vision. Because it's fundamentally an issue of equity. Because regardless if you're a kid in Otis or a kid in public housing in Cambridge, if you can't go home and Google Wikipedia your homework at night, you can't compete with your classmates, let alone with the rest of the world. And I think we need to expand that. There's two things we need to do. We need to expand that network into cities and towns. And a lot of that is going to be going to the mayors, to the city councilors, selling the idea, selling the vision. And that's where, having served on the city council for the last 5 years, I have an advantage over all my colleagues, all the other people running for lieutenant governor, in that I have credibility when I go in and talk about these
I
things.
think it's doable in the city of Boston and Cambridge.
That's my next thing, is I think we need to expand it to the rest of the state. And we started the ends, and we started there because literally they only had access to dial-up. But eventually we need to move inwards, and we need to cover the entire state. And if we had the fastest internet in Massachusetts out of anywhere in the world, and anywhere in the country, imagine the companies that would flock here to get access to that. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about investments. It's going to help you personally, but it's also going to help everyone. It's going to help the Commonwealth grow. And so I think that I'm on a task force with Susan Crawford, who's written the book about the monopoly.
Almost wrap it up.
So yes, my answer is yes.
Oh, that was fast. I said wrap it up. That was great. No, I want to thank you for being here. I wish you the best of luck in the upcoming election and the convention. Okay.
Well, I want to thank all of you. And I'll just say one thing. My father always said, you cannot have a government for the people, by the people, if the people don't show up. And you've all shown up, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And if you have ideas, I believe in accessibility. This literature, like I said, has my cell phone. You could call it now, it would bust my pocket. I would probably ignore it because I'm talking to all of you. But if you ever have ideas, if you ever have thoughts, you can feel free to email me or call me personally, and I would love to hear from you. So, thank you so much.
I know been patient. He is currently running for Register of Suffolk Family and Probate Court, Suffolk County. A little introduction, and I know the room's getting thinner, but Monty and I go back a long way, many years. And Monty, I know Monty in my days in the legislature when he worked at the city council for many years for City Council Peggy Davis-Mullen, days of law school together, and Monty's a practicing attorney, the majority work criminal defense. We recently had a case together or against each other, and it was pretty exciting. And thanks, he let me win, so thank you.
I know, I walked in, he was there, like, oh my God.
So in any event, without further ado, my good friend who's running for Register of Probate, he's the only attorney, I'm sure he's going to tell you that in his speech, he's the only attorney actually in the race running for this position.
Thank you very much. The good news is that I'm going to cut it down to an hour, okay? So, I should be done in 5 minutes. But my name is Martin Keogh. I am a Ward 20 Democratic delegate. I'll be at the convention. I'll see most of you out there. And I am running for the Register of Probate for Suffolk County, which encompasses Ward 3 and the rest of Boston, as well as Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop. I have been an attorney for the last 15 years. That's where I met Dan. Was up at law school in 1996, I think it was. So it's almost 20 years I've been with Dan. And I'm sure I probably saw him before that. I just did actually through the campaign, Jeff, probably back in '94. But for the last 10 years, I've been practicing family and probate law, juvenile law. I think the last time I spoke here, I told you my own experiences growing up is the reason why I get into law school to help kids and families, etc. But for the last years, I've been doing family and probate law, and I can tell you that what Dan just said, I am the only attorney in the race who actually has family and probate law experience and who is actually practicing that court. And sometimes I'll get a case and regarding, I'll tell you what probate court does next, but I'll get a case and I'll say, oh, please be from Norfolk County, please be from Norfolk County, because the Suffolk County probate court is a mess. If you don't know about probate, I'll tell you really quick. I know you might know. I know Dan knows. I'm not sure who else is an attorney in the room. But most people don't know what the probate court is. It deals with death, divorce, custody, wills, estates, trust, guardianships, conservatorships, and equity, which encompasses every other thing in the world that we couldn't put a name on. So pretty much it's fair to say that somebody going to the probate court's not going to go there happy. But if I get elected, I'm hoping that their time in there, that we're extremely helpful to them, so that they leave, they feel a lot better than when they come in. There's only one person that's going to be happy. It's the person that's going to get a lot of money, being there. But everybody else is pretty miserable. I decided to run because my experience in the probate court for the last couple of years, it's been on a decline. And if anyone's been there, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's not the people that work there, but it's the fact that they're short-staffed. I don't think we need to hire any more people because I think the job can get done with the people that are there. But what we do need to do is introduce the internship program, which consists of law students who come in to help out the people who come in that don't come in with an attorney. Even area colleges and new associates at a law firm who need the experience. At one point, there were 5 days a week that they had attorneys who were providing assistance to people who didn't have attorneys, and now it's down to 2, and you can see that the line's out the door. I do care about my fellow brothers and sisters in the bar, about getting them out of there, but I'm more concentrating on the people who come in without the attorneys because they're the ones that need the most help. Another thing that we had, they just put a website up in the last month, which is great because before they had nothing. I used to go to the Plymouth probate website because they had everything I needed on there, so I wouldn't have to come to town. But the mass.gov now has stuff. What we need next to cut the lines down to make it easy for everybody is to make it interactive. So, like with the registry of motor vehicles, you can do your license online. eBay, you can buy things and send a check or do whatever you got to do to get it. We should have that at the probate court. That would make things a heck of a lot easier for the people. But the number one problem in that court is that over the last 20 years, today, as a matter of fact, 9 people out of 10 walked in there unrepresented. And why? I think someone brought it up here. Nobody wants to pay an attorney. Attorneys can really run the tab up. And really, I feel the same way. I don't think you should have to hire an attorney to do something that should be really simple. And it's not simple at that court. But the 9 out of 10 people who go there today, they haven't got a clue. And it's like I say, I'm trying to keep this in 5 minutes actually. I didn't know what testate, intestate, pro bono, pro se. I didn't know what any of those Latin legal terms meant until I went to law school. And these people that go there today say that they have no idea what they know. The clerks can't give them any legal advice because they have engaged in the unauthorized practice of law, which is against the law. It's unethical. but they don't know what's going on, and they need someone there to help them other than the clerks. So, I originally had probably a 15-minute presentation, but I'm gonna cut it down. If you have any questions, I will tell you the one thing, with the governors and Lieutenant Governor Kansas came today, I'm glad I'm not running for that position. I got a lot of information, which was great, but that's just too much stuff to know, and I think I'm gonna stick to what I know. But it's governor, lieutenant governor, auditor, treasurer, state rep, state senator, governor's council, dog catcher, and register of probate right there at the bottom. So when you go to vote on September 9th, which by the way, I don't like to tell anybody when my birthday is, but that's my birthday, so I don't want a present.
A birthday present.
I know, my wife will say, what do you want for birthday? I don't want it, let's just go out to eat, I don't want anything, you know what? So when she asked me this year, I'm gonna say, just vote for me. That's all you gotta do, just vote for me. I'm gonna ask you the same thing, but start from the bottom up, because I think you're gonna make it halfway down the ballot, you're gonna get glazed over and say, nothing else matters. But probate court does matter, because it affects every single one of you in this room at one point in your life, and if not life and death, because you've gotta go through the probate court to exit out of this world legally. So does anybody have any questions?
That was a great. Any question for Monty? I really appreciate everybody, for those who hung in there, stuck it out. So we do have a question. Great.
A question, so, is there a problem with the probate budget at this point?
The budget's about 1.7 million. It's not that, and it really, at one point there were 90 employees there. It cut down to 55, and now it's down to 30. Harry Spence runs the court system, and I'm not going to disagree with anything he says. Thinks that they don't have to hire, the court doesn't have to hire anybody in there because there's enough people that handle what's coming in. So the attrition rate is very high. It's down to 30 people. They're not hiring. They may hire some people in the future, but really with 30 people, and it's a huge caseload. I can't say they're all doing a great job. But what we have to do.
I've been there before, and they're all really nice.
Yeah, they're great, but it's still the lines out the door. It took me an hour and a half to file a document. It had nothing to do with anyone that worked there. It was just the process. But the probate court has to catch up with what's going on. Everything's online now, and when everything goes online, it's going to make it easier. You still get people like my mother that don't have a computer that are going to have to come in. The self-help center, which you might be familiar with, is gone. We're going to put that right back in because that's going to help out 100% of the people who walk in that office before the clerks do. So, but it has to do. They can even cut the budget. If I get there, I'll cut the budget more if I can.
I think the problem is with the budget is it's funded by the legislature, and I think the courts, in particular like probate or district courts or whatever it may be, the courts is always an easy target especially when we've seen a recession over the last several years. The courts are always an easy target to cut them 2%, 3%, and they just, when you have people retire, you just don't fill those spots.
I think they call them hacks, but that's not. But I'll tell you one thing, this is not a 9 to 5. I heard all my opponents, they're great guys, but they don't have the experience, the background, or the knowledge. I work, it's not just a job in the office, you've got to work with the courts too. And there's you got the clerk's office, which is where I want to go, and you got the courts, which is where I am. But there's a disconnect right there, and they've got to get connected. But I heard one of my opponents say, someone said, why are you running for this job? And I think he said, because I want a 9 to 5 job so I can be with my family. I go, I know he didn't mean it that way, but it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's you got to get there at 7 in the morning when everyone's satisfied. That's how I operate anyway. My wife's not going to like that, but it's all about the public service, and I've been in public service for over 20 years, as Dan mentioned earlier. So, is that it?
I'll keep you here all night. Next question?
I love answering questions, so please.
A suggestion, or maybe a question, a suggestion. I've retired from the practice of law, so it's all behind me, and I blocked it up. I don't even remember. But what I do remember is a peculiarity about the probate court, or maybe something, that as a lawyer, I could file something in the superior court, pay the fee if it was the entry fee, or and that's it. It gets talked, and that's it. In the probate court, I had to go talk to a register of probate in order to file it.
An assistant registrar.
Yeah, an assistant registrar. Yeah. Why? That seems peculiar.
And this is why the probate court's got to catch up with the world today. It can be done online. You don't have to do it. But the reason being, one of the main reasons that the 9 people out of 10 that go without a lawyer don't have the first.
Oh, sure. For them, I can understand.
Yeah. But for an attorney, I guess
well,
it's just
something to think about
process in the system.
When you are elected, which you will be.
I hope so. I can't leave here without asking for your vote also. I hope you vote for me. But those are things I'm going to address, you know, it's not that I love to work hard, I love to work. If this race is decided on a hard work one, I'm gonna win, no problems, no one's gonna work harder than me, but I tell you one thing, if you help me and get elected, I'll work twice as hard in that office as I am trying to campaign for it, so. And that's something I definitely would try to address, just to make it easy. You know, we'll get the attorneys and we're gonna get the public in.
Cheaper for the client, because the attorney doesn't have to spend time doing something in the probate court that he doesn't have to do.
Well, like, you know, and I'm like the type of guy that, you know, the thing I did about a month ago was, 20 minutes wait to talk to the clerk, which you just brought up, and then I had to go down and get the file for some reason or another, and that was another 20 minutes, and then they had to find the file. Thank God it wasn't lost, and things just get misplaced sometimes. I went back to the clerk and I cut the line, there's no way it was gonna wait 20 minutes again. So, hey, I got it right here. Oh, okay, come on, now I'll go talk to the caseworker. So it was an hour and a half in there, never mind the ride in and the ride home. If I had to charge my client for that, they'd be like, are you kidding me? You know, at $100 now, that'd be a $350 tab to file one document, that was it. It's not fair to the clients, it's not fair to the public, and, you know, I'd say, it's also not fair to the court employees and the judges either, because these things should be done right away. We want speedy justice, that's the mandate of the court, speedy justice. It doesn't happen like it happens on Judge Judy on TV. It's just like a lot longer. So, I'm not, you know, I want to thank you for your time, thank you, Dan.
Marty, thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you. $100 an hour next time. I'm not going to tell you what my fees are. Thank you, Marty. This concludes our session, and I want to thank everybody for being here, and thank you for sticking it out. I know we went a little long, we started a little later, but thank you.
Let's also thank Dan.
Yeah.